All right, back on the Cummins 5.9 with the cylinder one misfire. I already put up the videos from last night when I was showing you the actual compression numbers of number one, as we know already. Number one is no good. Has 50, 40 psi. I've already taken compression of all the other cylinders. Didn't really put a video up because there's no need for me to show every single cylinder. That's not the diagnosis that's going on at hand. I just wanted to compare it to this one to see what the variances were. As you can see, I showed you number two. Number two had about 465 psi, and number one had about 40, 50 psi. Obvious bad cylinder. So right now I'm just going to show you a few other little things that I wanted to cover right before I show you how to install the injector and what the process is for that. And I'm going to show you why that process is very important. It's not just a manufacturer wanting you to do all this extra work. It's actually a very intricate way of doing it because of the way the system is designed. As you can see, I already have the first four injectors already in with the lines, even the eye hole in the back, just because I needed to get that done right away. Also, as you can see, I labeled the injectors. It's really not that important in these years, '05, for me to label the injectors and put them back where they went. The computer is not going to recognize that. The computer has no ability to recognize that because in these years they don't have like they do in the 2008 and over, and definitely in the 2011 and over, where you have to program an IQA code, which is the injector quantity adjustment code. When the injectors are built, there's a certain code that the manufacturer puts based on what the injection process of that injector is, meaning the volume, all of those different things that it does. So the computer needs that code so it can understand how that injector works and how the processes of that injector under different temperatures and all that, how it works, so the computer can start adjusting for that cylinder. It gets very complicated because from 2011 and over, these engines get very complicated. That's why they're making so much more power. That's why you have Cummins 6.7s with 1,000 foot-pounds of torque, and the Duramax with 1,000 foot-pounds of torque, and the Power Strokes with 1,000 foot-pounds of torque. I mean, that was never imaginable in a diesel, in a production diesel this small. Yes, in the bigger ones, but not in the smaller ones. But again, let me show you why this process is very important when installing the injector. There's a reason why it's very important, and I'm going to show you why right now. Let me show you why. So I'm not sure if you've seen this before, but this is obviously your injector. Here's number two, but this is your injector. You see that hole right here? That is the actual hole that feeds fuel into the injector. That's the fuel coming into the injector that it's going to use to spray out of the nozzle. That little hole is the return. So the same pocket that carries the connector tube. This is your connector tube. Excuse me, it's a little dirty. I was rubbing it with my dirty hands. But this connector tube right here goes right into there. See, so that's what it would look like. You're seeing it over there? That's what it looks like inside of the head. Okay, so it looks like that pretty much. That's what you're looking at right there. Let me see if I can show it to you better. So that's what it looks like. That's why it's very important that this nut that holds down the connector tube slash injector feed tube, injector connector tube. There's going to be different names people call it. I believe the manufacturer calls it injector connector tube. But it is very important that this gets torqued down properly, because this is the tube that actually feeds the injector the fuel. And you're talking about a minimum of 5,000 psi all the way up to 30,000 psi. So if you can imagine that if you don't torque this down properly, you're going to get fuel loss right here. And that fuel loss doesn't get seen on the floor. It's not like it leaks out. That actually just goes right out into the return pocket, because the center of the head is actually the return passages. There's a hose all the way in the back of the head that wraps around and goes to in front of the filter, where it also grabs the excess fuel from the CP3 pump and all that, and it shoots it back to the tank. So the actual head itself, the port inside of the head, is actually a return system all in its own. But that same port in the head is also where the holes for the access for this connector tube to go into. And like I was telling you before, that there, first of all, that's a sign that it's a 6.7 liter connector tube, so it's a little bit bigger, a little bit better designed. The old ones had two ball bearings right here, but that's the connector tube right there. So that's the way this system is installed inside of the head. That's what the system looks like, what you're looking at right there. Okay, I want to show you something else. this is what that hole that I'm talking about where the connector tube looks like. Let me turn on that light real quick. Bear with me, I'm just trying to make it as visible as possible. So right there, that's where the connector tube goes into. I'm going to put a light through, this is the number 1 hole. I'm going to put a light through the injector hole up here inside the head. That's what it looks like. If you can see at the top right there, that's also the slot right there for that connector tube placement key. That's where that placement key goes into. That's how you know that you're not setting it in there wrong. So nonetheless, let me show you how this works. All right, I will be right back and I'll show you how that works.